particularly in a tight housing market. Some of the stories that we hear from families are that they know that there's lead paint, but they don't want to bring it up to the landlord or say anything to anyone because they're afraid of losing an affordable unit that they currently have. And they're afraid that their rent will go up and they won't be able to afford to stay there. And then for families that can afford to go, sometimes they'll just go and find another housing opportunity and leave it to be someone else's problem. It also has a huge psychological impact on families where they're in fear, and they will actually hide the fact that they have children living in their unit because they're afraid of having to move and not being in a stable housing environment anymore. It has a huge impact. It's about 35 to 40% of the caseload that we see, and we see a lot of that discrimination that's associated with lead paint also associated with Section 8 voucher holders. These are particularly vulnerable families that usually have children that have a really hard time finding housing that they can afford that is covered by their voucher. And the stress of trying to find housing under a very tight time frame. Oftentimes these families don't even know that they can apply for extensions, and they just give up. And a lot of that discrimination we see against those vulnerable families that have vouchers as well. So that's what I want people to know, that it's still a very important issue. We've got a lot of families with children in the city that are experiencing discrimination because lead paint exists. And this is something that we can get rid of as a city. We are slowly raising awareness, but given the tight housing market and the crunch for housing in the city, there's so much competition against families with other people looking for housing that I think we need to do a lot more. When we look at the Boston data for neighborhoods in the city and where we have children that are exposed to lead, and where we have older housing that's pre-1978, it's concentrated in the same neighborhoods where we have high concentrations of people of color, particularly Black and Latino families. So this is also an issue that is affecting people of color in the city of Boston disproportionately. And I think we can do a lot more to support those families. They already experience so many other barriers in the city. That lead paint discrimination is just another barrier for them. There's more that we can do, I think, in terms of policy, in terms of assistance to these families. So the Get the Lead Out program that the city has is hugely underutilized. We are lucky that we have a program that can provide this type of assistance, but it's underutilized. The federal requirement is that a child has to be present to be eligible for the funds. A child has to be living in the home. I think that's another problem, that the way we see housing is a child has to be a trigger to create lead-safe housing. And we should see all housing as potentially a place where children are living or visiting. I mean, that's not the way the world works. Everyone has children visiting them, even if they don't live with them. So having all housing be lead safe. Can you imagine just, a grandmother who is spending time with, her grandchildren just on the weekends? That's a significant amount of every weekend for, years that a child could be exposed to lead paint. But no requirement there to, but then that's not the child's primary home. So treating all homes as if they're, they should be safe homes for children.